Hey, this is Carmine Appice, and I'm on Musicians on the Record. So let's get rocking.
1, 2, 3, 4.
This is huge, musicians on the record. Bring it on.
Hi, welcome to Musicians on the Record. I'm David Ward. You've heard the music, now hear their story, and you have definitely heard this guy's music. On the show, we have rock drumming royalty on the program today. Drummer for Vanilla Fudge, Jeff Beck, Rod Stewart, and so many more. Carmine Appice, welcome to the show.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
Great to have you here. So many stories that I want to talk with you about. But let's start with, what are you up to today as far as drumming and music?
Well, I just got off the weekend with the Rascals. We're in California. I'm in my home in California now. And we just did 2 shows. One was Friday night at the Anaheim at the Grove. And Saturday night was a beautiful, crazy venue up in Saratoga, California. And it was the Mountain Winery, they call it. And it was like a totally amphitheater kind of place with a stage in front of this building that looked like a castle.
Wow, beautiful.
And it was outdoors. It was beautiful, really, really great show.
Amazing. Great
venue, and we had a great show. The audiences for the Rascals with me in it had been great. Great reactions, and so I'm doing that, and we just booked another Appice Brothers gig in November. So we have a weekend in October, and we're going to have another weekend in November. And in between that, I got Rascals and Vanilla Fudge shows.
Wow! So Vanilla Fudge has reformed, gotten back together.
Oh, we've been together since 1999.
But still going strong, still doing shows.
Yeah, still going, doing shows, did albums. We just released a DVD live at Sweden Rock.
Wow.
The same token, on the same week, it was 2/16, I played Thursday night with Vanilla Fudge at Sweden Rock, which we videoed and audioed. And then Saturday night I played with King Cobra.
Wow, amazing.
In the same festival.
Wow.
And we audio recorded that. And with that, we just released a live album, King Cobra Live at Sweden Rock.
Wow. So you're still a busy guy. There's no slowing down for you with drumming and rock and roll.
No, I mean, this is my hobby.
Right.
I get paid not to play. I get paid to travel.
Right.
Get on the planes at wee hours of the mornings, and drive in vans and buses and SUVs to the gig and back home and in a hotel and wake up and do it again.
Right. Yeah. Playing's the fun.
Playing's free.
Free. Yeah. That's
awesome. Fun.
I love that. I love that attitude. That's great. So, what's that like playing with the Rascals these days? Obviously, Dino Dinelli, another great drummer like yourself, playing Good Lovin', Groovin', all those great songs.
It's a lot of fun. It's almost like playing with Rod Stewart again. It's that kind of music versus like playing with Cactus, which is a jam band, and Vanilla Fudge, which is a combination arrangement and jam band. Now, the Rascal, there's some jamming in there. Matter of fact, I brought to the attention of Felix, who's, like the main guy. I said, when you guys were coming up, you were a musicians band. And I said, that's what we need to do again, is get that. So I get a little solo in the show. We have a tremendous bass player, Jimmy Keneally, great bass player, great second keyboard player, singer. We do all the backgrounds, the 3 of us. And Gene plays guitar. There's a second guitar player also. And so it sounds like the records. We even have horns every market. We bring in horns from every market. And we rehearse in the afternoon with them for an hour.
Wow.
And they read the charts.
Right.
I give them credit.
That's great.
It's awesome.
Great. How do you take care of yourself physically these days compared to in the earlier days, knowing that, drumming can be physically taxing on the body?
On the early days, I didn't care. Early days we partied, we stayed up all night. I never did cocaine or anything, but I was never really a drinker. A little bit of psychedelics now and again. But but now, I make sure I get at least 6-7 hours sleep a night. I go to the gym when I'm home every other day. And even when we're on the road, sometimes I go to a gym before breakfast, and then I would play that night. But when I play, it's really my cardio.
Right.
When I do my solo, I can feel my heart rate's probably about 130.
Right. That's great. It is great exercise, right? No doubt about it.
Yes.
The other thing that I thought was very cool that you have done of late in more of my research is your art project, Purple, if I have that right. And,
right.
I don't know if you would describe that as psychedelic, but I love all of the colors, and it's based on the drums. Can you talk more about that?
Well, what it is really is they put me in a room, and they've done it with Carl Palmer and Billy Cobham and a few other guys, and they give them these glowing drumsticks, and they play grooves and they play patterns, But I figured, it's really not about the grooves and the patterns. It's about the look of it.
Right.
So I told them to give me 4 sticks. So I use 4 sticks.
Yeah,
like 4 sticks. And when I'm doing these things, they're filming it for different cameras from different angles.
Yeah.
And then they put it all together.
Right.
In one, like painting, and they put it on canvas. And my series was the first series to be in 3D. So it comes with 3D glasses. And it's interesting,
Yeah,
I have one in New York. They were making me one for my house here in L.A. I haven't got it yet, but I think they forgot about it, actually. And then I have another art thing that I do with, if you go to Ed Heck, edheck.com, you see it's called, there's one painting called Drum City, but basically the concept is everything's made of drums. So like the city's made of drums with these beautiful colors. So I draw the city made of drums, and then he projects it on a canvas, and he paints outlines what I draw. And then he puts the colors in it. And then there's like the pyramids, there's Stonehenge, the Leaning Tower of Drumsa, and everything has drum in it.
Music and art are so closely combined, and they have been. Have you always done art along with your music, drawing, painting?
Well, not really. The drum art with the glowing drumsticks came about through my manager, Bruce Pilato manages Carl Palmer. Carl did it. Okay. So they asked him if I wanted to do it, and I said, sure, I'll do it. And they're in L.A., so it just was taking my drums down to SIR, shutting the lights off and playing.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it looks like a lot of fun.
But I always drew drum sets and gold records and stuff just like that. But it looks like kiddie art, and that's what this guy Ed Heck's art looks like. It's kiddie art. So I figured, hey, let me make things out of drums. A city. Like a bridge going across like a scene like a Manhattan, Brooklyn scene.
Yeah.
The bridge going across is a hi-hat stand.
That's great.
I love it. And like the Seattle, the tower is like a hi-hat.
Yeah, of course, right?
Tower. Yeah, I mean there's a lot of fun. So there's a lot of different ones. There's the moon landing on the moon. And the moon landing ship is made of drums and cymbals and stuff.
That's great. That's great. I got to check that out.
It's crazy stuff.
Yeah, no doubt. Let's talk about drums, your story. When were you first inspired to play and fall in love with the drums?
Well, I guess it was my cousin Joey was a drummer, and he had the Slingerland blues. I think it was a blue pearl Slingerland drum set. And every time we went over to his house, we would, I would naturally zoom into his room. We had the drums, and I'd start banging on the drums, And then when I go home, I bang on the pots and pans. So my parents kept getting, the hint, and they bought me a toy set of drums because I was young at the time, and I used to break them. And then, I would bang on pots and pans, but it wouldn't be, like a steady thing. Every time I went to his house, I'd get inspired. And finally, I don't know, maybe I was 11, and they bought me a drum set for Christmas and my birthday because I'm a December baby, Okay. So sometimes that worked out good. I get a bigger gift, one gift instead of two little ones.
Right.
So this one big gift was a $55 drum set that had a bass drum, snare, and a cymbal that they clip-on cymbal onto the bass drum, one of those.
Yep.
They bought it at Sam Ash, at the very first Sam Ash store. And I set it up downstairs in my cellar in Brooklyn. And I go down there and I play. A lot of people would ask me, like in interviews, what was your first album? Expecting me to say, like, the Beatles or Elvis Presley or Buddy Holly. Mine was Cooper and Rich. The album that had the 2 drum sets on the cover. And I used to look at that album cover and see, like, Gene Krupa's setup was right next to Buddy's, but I could see Gene's stand was going through Buddy's bass drum, and I never understood how, because that was the first time they did, like, photoshopping, and it was a superimposed over Buddy's bass drum, but I knew that album. I played to it. I learned every note of it, and it was not a few years later. I didn't realize, that there's a part where they take 4s. I thought it was all Buddy, but now as I learned more about drumming, I realized that it was Buddy and Gene together.
How had you even heard about Gene Krupa? Was your dad listening to
My
him?
mother.
Your mother was listening to him.
My mother. Well, my mother didn't listen to him. When I started playing drums, she used to tell me about him. That she used to go see him at the New York Paramount. And he would have everybody dancing in the aisles to his drum rhythms. So that, I guess from my mother and my father then told me as well, then they bought me the album, the Krupa and Rich album. And that was my first album that I played to and learned.
Well, I mean, who better than Krupa and Rich
to
learn the drums from, right?
Then after that, it was Joe Morello's records, and Joe Morello with Dave Brubeck and Max Roach. And really, I would say it was Joe Morello, Gene Krupa, Buddy Rich, and Max Roach that really formed my style, along with my drum teacher, Dick Bennett. He taught me how to read and how to play big band and how to play jazz. And I went through the Chapin book, and I went through all the classic books, the Syncopation book, and I went through it forward and backwards, and which developed a lot of my coordination by doing that. And then later, because really, rock music didn't have great drumming at the time. It had okay drumming, like Twist and Shout by the Isley Brothers and all that, but Motown had really good drumming in it. And then the James Brown record, Live at the Apollo, was awesome. But when I was a kid, my older brother went to one of these Alan Freed rock and roll shows, in which I had Bo Diddley and Chuck Berry and Frankie Lyman, and he wouldn't take me because he was going with all his cool friends with the motorcycle jackets with the hair slicked back, but he wouldn't take me, so my mother took me.
Okay.
And I went to see, the Brooklyn Paramount shows of Alan Freed, and they had 2 drummers in it. And it was like a big band, rock band, with 2 drummers. And I said, wow. And, they didn't have great miking systems in those days. So the power of the drums was coming right off the stage. And it was awesome. That like really inspired me to go home and play my drums,
Yeah, because who you're talking about is Buddy Rich, Gene Krupa, Morello, and Max.
That's Max
Roach. I mean, this is the Mount Rushmore of drummers, Mount Rushmore of jazz drummers, right?
Yeah. Totally.
So that's for some people might say that's a pretty big switch from that kind of drumming all the way to rock drumming.
Well, when I grew up, I didn't just play rock. I played jazz gigs. I had this sax player named John DeLello, who was like a John Coltrane. He was like, really all these 30-second notes on the sax. And I had a great keyboard player that played left-hand bass, and a fairly good guitar player. And we would play jazz gigs, We'd play all these, Satin Doll and 1 O'Clock Jump and all that stuff. And then the next night, I'd play a rock gig with a different band. And that would be Twist and Shout and At the Hop, and, stuff like that. And then the next day, I might play a Sweet 16 party, which would be society music, like the ladies, a tramp, and playing with brushes and playing cha-chas and merengues and mambos. So I grew up playing an array of music all my life. So when I played rock, I naturally liked it. And then when rock started getting more involved, and I actually saw Dino Dinelli, who I'm replacing in the Rascals, play at the Metropole. He opened up for Gene Krupa.
Wow.
And Dino played some really cool grooves, like boom boom bap boom boom bap boom boom bap boom boom bap boom boom bap. And I was like 4 years younger than him, and I was going, wow, that's really cool.
Right.
And I don't know if he wrote it out or if I wrote it out, but I got talking to him after his set. He also told me to put shredded newspaper in my bass drum to muffle up some of the overtones that you don't want, and varnish the inside of the bass drum. So I started doing that, and when I started getting endorsed by Ludwig, I had them varnish the insides of my bass drum in the beginning. And then I think they still put a coating of something on the inside of the bass drum. So I don't know if it came from me telling Ludwig to do it, or if it just somebody else came up with the idea, but the Dino Dinelli told me to do it,
And so you're still putting newspaper in your bass drum at this point?
Yeah, it's ironic, when I play the gigs with the Rascals, I got the newspaper in there.
Right. It's hard to find newspaper these days with all its...
Yeah, I know. You're right, because sometimes when we do these flying gigs, I have a drum set that we carry the drum heads, the Felix and Gene's Rascals, Carmine Appice. Yeah. And we take the head off, and I should carry around like a couple of newspapers with me. Yeah, but we always ask me, could we get a newspaper? And they usually have something.
Okay.
Okay. Not necessarily like a Daily News or a New York Times, but some sort of local paper that shows you what's going on in town.
Right. What would you say about your tuning specifically on the drum, either bass drum or if somebody wanted to get the Carmine Appice sound?
I don't have any particular way of tuning. I tune the toms in thirds, like bum bum bum. So you can go like bum 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 bum, like in the mood.
Yeah.
You can play in the mood on the toms. Okay. Bass drums, it just varies. It varies on the drum and what the wood is made of. Like I'm using this D drum Max kit now with UV1 heads on the toms and on the snare drum. And I've got that kit on the East Coast with a stock D drum, bass drum batter head, that whatever comes with it. And with the newspaper, and the bass drums sound great. And the toms sound great with those heads. Now I got the duplicate kit in LA. I played for the first time Friday. I didn't have the UV1 heads. I had G2s on the toms. Totally different sound. Yeah. And I like it better with UV1, so I just ordered some UV1s from Evans to send out here so I can put them on the toms and the snare as well. I have that UV head works great on my snare. Yeah. I have the 5-inch brass Carmine D drum snare, has the engraving and everything, awesome. And it sounds really good.
Absolutely, it's fantastic. So if we keep going with that story, you're a young kid, a teenage kid. You're starting to work professionally pretty early. What was the dream that was starting to develop of what you wanted to do with music?
I wanted to be a famous drummer. Okay. I used to practice my autographs when I was 12. Yeah. I didn't. Rock stars that didn't exist then as rock stars.
Right.
So it wasn't. I want to be a rock. Like today, people say I want to be a rock star like it's an occupation. Right. Yeah. My girlfriend, who Leslie Gold, she's been on the radio for years, and she said, there's people growing up that want to be rock stars. Right. And it's like I want to be an electrician.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. So
it's not easy. So I wanted to be a famous drummer, and I worked through my teens. I bought my first car, a brand new Chevy in 1964, from the money I made playing. Yeah. I put the down payment. My parents co-signed for me, and then I made the payments. And I was very proud of the fact that I bought my own car, and I was 17.
Yeah, amazing. And so the definition of being a famous drummer at that point for you was you wanted to be on the Gene Krupa level?
Yeah, I wanted to be like a Gene Krupa, but I didn't know how to get there. Sure. But I was also happy doing like my drum teacher did. You know, he taught during the week, and he did gigs on the weekend, and he made a good living.
Right.
You know, he bought a house. He had a beautiful basement downstairs, finished basement, soundproof with his drums, and so I was happy if I would be able to work on the weekends,
Right.
and then during the week give lessons, and make a good living, and that was good.
Right.
Not until I met the Vanilla Fudge did I actually think about making hit records.
Right.
Before that I was playing clubs. I played clubs with Jimi Hendrix.
Yeah.
We played clubs with the Vanilla Fudge when we were called the Pigeons with a group called the Hassles that had Billy in it. Billy Joel, that is.
Oh.
And the Vagrants had a group called that had Leslie West in a group called the Vagrants. But we were all just trying to make it at that point. Right. But before that, I didn't really care. I mean, even Jimi Hendrix, we'd go up to a prostitute's apartment where we played in Manhattan, and he'd be talking about making it, and I'd say, yeah, that would be great, but I didn't really have a dream of making it. I guess he did. Right. Next time I saw him was in England, he made it, and I was in Vanilla Fudge.
Well, I think you made it as well. So
yeah.
Because you connected with him, in your book, Stick It, which has been reading more of it. It's fantastic. It's a rock and roll roller coaster ride, is what I thought it was.
It is.
You connected with Jimmy when he was Jimmy James, and you were in Thursday's Children, right?
Right. That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
And we played these gigs together. In New York, you had all these clubs that people played. Even the Rascals, we saw them in the clubs before they made it. That's when they were the musicians band. Felix played left-hand bass with his hand and his feet. It was awesome. And Jimmy was playing that, and we were playing it, and a lot of other people played. I played it with bands with horns, without horns. I never had a bass player until Tim Bogert. Though. Always had left-hand bass.
Oh, was that right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow.
Because we saw this soul band, this black group they were a trio and a singer. They had a Worlds of piano who played left-hand bass, a guitar, and a singer, and they sounded great,
Right.
and the left-hand bass really filled it up.
Sure.
He ran it through like a Fender basement amp, and it was really awesome. So that's what I did.
Right. Sometimes it's all you need, right?
Even had an accordion player that played left-hand bass on the accordion.
We got to get more accordion in rock and roll, Carmine, right?
Right.
Let's talk about Vanilla Fudge and you connecting with them and the ups and downs of that band.
Well, I was playing in the club, Choo Choo Club, and Mark and Tim came in, and they had heard that I was a drummer that could sing and had a good right foot, and I was into like R&B, So they came in, they saw me play, and when we took a break, they came over and they said, hey, I'm Mark Stein, it's Tim Bogert, we have a band called the Pigeons. We're looking for a drummer, and we want to know if maybe you'd be interested in auditioning to play with us, because we have a manager that's going to put us on salary, and we're going to really try and make it and make hit records.
Right.
But again, I was like making good money with Thursday's Children, working 4 nights a week. Yeah. I bought my car, it was only a year and a half after I had that car. Yeah. And I didn't know, Right. I said, I'll come down and check it out. But when I went down and checked it out, I saw that the club their manager owned, that they were going to play there all the time, and he was going to give us a salary, whether we worked or not. Yeah. And I said, maybe this could be good.
Yeah. It's a good gig.
So,
right?
Yeah, so I call it my, when you think about things to do, you weigh it out. Here's a positive, here's a negative. So I came up with more positive, and I call that my change of life decision.
Right.
Because when I made that decision, it changed my life.
Right. Yeah. How old were you at that point when you joined the Fudge?
Let me see. I was 19.
19, yeah.
We were called the Pigeons at the time.
Pigeons, yeah. And somebody somehow said you got to change the name, right?
Yeah, Ahmet Erdogan from Atlantic Records didn't like the name.
Got it. Yep. And I was reading in your book, and I've had the chance to talk to other folks, the first time you heard your hit on the radio, what was that like?
Oh, it was unbelievable. It was magic, you know. And I had this. I got married because to get out of the draft, right? And then I wasn't really into being married. After I became 4F, as you read in the book, I tried to get out of the marriage, and my parents said, "No, we got 200 people coming. You're getting married."
Right.
You know,
a lot of pressure.
9 months later, I got an annulment anyway. But during the first 6 months, I was into it, and then I was playing with the pigeons, and I met this beautiful, really gorgeous Italian girl from Queens, and I kind of fell in love with her. So on the sly, I'd always have her with me, you know, and basically I was in the car with her when I first heard it on the radio, and I was like, wow, and I was like punching her, look, we're on the radio, you know. It was exciting, you know.
Yeah, definitely a magic moment. Another magic moment for you guys with the Vanilla Fudge was, of course, a couple of times being on the Ed Sullivan Show. Please talk about that.
You know, you never really saw him much. He'd come in and say hello to you the first day of rehearsal. He had like 4 days rehearsal. And then when you go on, you take a picture of it like either before or after the show. So that was it. But the experience was actually playing the show. Because I remember going down the elevator, and I asked the elevator operator, hey, how many people watch the show? And he said, oh, about 50 million. And I felt my stomach just turn, like, oh my God. And I felt a little bit of anxiety there for a minute until I actually hit the drum set. Once I hit the drum set and I started playing, it went away. But it was an amazing experience because we had our own sound guy helping with the sound, and we sounded pretty damn good on that show. And from that day on, everybody was raving about that show. And then a year later, we went on again when we had another hit record, Shotgun, which was top 15 single. And we went on there. The first time we went on Ed Sullivan, we didn't have a hit single yet.
Okay.
We had a number 4 album, and we were the first band to ever get a top 10 album without a smash single. Wow. You know, so.
And so did that make the hit for you, being on Ed Sullivan the first time?
It kept the album hit going, but then that was in February. When was it? In September of '68. That's when we were on the first time. Okay. September '68. They re-released "You Keep Me Hanging On," and the album was falling down. It was like maybe number 30. And then the single went up and went top 10, and the album came back up to top 15. And then the other 2 albums we had on the charts we had like 2 albums in the top 20, 3 albums on the top 100, and a top 10 single. Amazing. So that was like the height of everything right then, you know. Right. And then the next album came out near the beginning, and that hit the charts as well. And one of them fell off. We still had 3 albums on the charts and a top 15 single again. But the Hanging On was still somewhere like in the top 100. And then we went on Ed Sullivan again. And then we did Shotgun. Yeah. At the end of Shotgun, if you listen to that, you'll hear the end of Rock and Roll by Zeppelin. Same, pretty much, I wouldn't say note for note, but the same idea, the same concept. So when I tell people that, they say, wow, it is the same. It is, you know, I said, yeah, except this was 4 years before rock and roll ever came out. So.
Yeah, I went back and listened to it, and you're right. It's the same thing. So yeah.
It's the same idea, you know.
Right. Can we talk?
But you know, but as Joe Morello said, none of us has it all. We all take from each other.
That's right.
All those rolling, what we used to call falling rocks, which John Bonham did as well. It came from Max Roach.
Right. Yeah.
You know?
And thank God.
Except with double bass drum.
Sure. Right. Thank God you guys came before us and they came before you, because we need some inspiration, right? Can we talk about you and John Bonham and Led Zeppelin? Is it fair to say that you mentored a young John Bonham?
Well, while he was on the road, and from what I understood from him, I was like one of his idols. Not a total idol. Gene Krupa was another idol. The R&B guys was idol. I was one of his rock idols, you know, probably along with Ginger Baker and Mitch. But he liked my style better because my style was power style. You know, I was hitting hard. Mitch didn't hit hard, neither did Ginger. Keith didn't really hit. Keith Moon didn't hit hard either. Well, when I came out, I was really hitting hard. And when I came out with the big drums, the oversized drums, the 26 bass drums, and the marching tenor drum was my small tom, 16 by 18 floor tom, and a 22 bass drum on its side, and then the gong. You know, at some point I had chimes. I had all kinds of orchestral stuff. When he saw that set, you know, they opened up for us. We got the album first, and when I heard Good Times, Bad Times, I said, man, this guy is badass. I said, what a foot on him. I love this guy, you know. And then I heard some similarities in his playing to my playing, like the a triplet, which was one of my trademarks back then, you know, and then those things were one of my trademarks. I heard some similarity. So when I met him, he told me that I was one of his idols and that he listened to all the Vanilla Fudge records and that I said, man, I love that triplet on the bass drum. And he said, well, I got that from you. And I said, I don't do that. He said, yeah, you do. I said, I don't do that. And I'm arguing with him. And he pointed out on one of my records, I think it was on the Renaissance record, where I went something like bop, doodle bop, doodle bop, doodle bop, doodle bop, doodle bop, like that. And he took that and went diddle 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 diddle, you know, with the 16-note triplet with a rest on the first one. And he said, so I got it from you. And I said, wow, I didn't even know I did that. Because in those days, we used to play go to records with the band, and we play whatever comes out, you know? And then it becomes written in stone,
right?
You know?
So in some ways, it could be the Appice triplets as well as the Bonham triplets.
Well, I mean, it was the half triplet was mine, you know, but the full-on triplet was definitely his. Yeah. But again, it's the same thing like Joe Morello said. He took what I did and did it his way. Right. You know, so I loved him. And then we saw my drum set. He said, oh, man, I would love to get a drum set like that. You think you could call Ludwig and talk to them? I said, yeah, I can definitely talk to them. So I called Ludwig because I was one of their bigger endorsers. There was me, Ginger, Mitch, and Dino. That was like the four big ones. And Dino was sort of not in the same realm as us because we were more in the album-oriented music. Yeah. We were a lot more playing, a lot more jamming, and you know, Dino was great in what he did. But they turned into a top 40 band, so it had a different outlook, a different image, you know. So I was an important endorser for Ludwig at the time, and I called him. I said, look, I got this band that's opening up for us. I called Led Zeppelin, Jimmy Page's band from the Yardbirds. We got a new drummer named John Bonham. I think they're going to be big. And he wants a drum set like my Big Maple kit. What do you think? Can we do that? They said, can you send us the album? So we sent them the album. And on the album, in my word, they gave him a duplicate set of my kit, you know. But that conversation is like it's ridiculous. The understatement of 5 decades. I think they're going to be big, you know.
You were right, though, right?
I was right, and we knew it. Right. We knew it. Then when we played with them, we knew it, too.
Yeah.
Because they were the first band to blow us off. We used to blow everybody off. We blew the Who off. We blew the Hendrix off. We blew off the Cream. We blew off all the big groups at the time. You know, and a lot of groups we were playing equal bill with, we weren't opening, but we blew them off anyway. Yeah. You know, the Fudge was nobody like us, and it was very dynamic, and we moved around on stage, and everyone else stood still, you know. And I mean, I used to walk around with Robert Plant and John Bonham in Hollywood. I remember telling Robert he should move around more.
He took your advice.
Now it's so funny, you know. It's so funny, you know. But we became all good friends, you know. Yeah. And when John died, I was playing with Rod at the time, and there was big rumors going around that I was going to be the one to fill it in, me or Cozy Powell. You know, but Cozy used to listen to me with John, and when I tell this story, you know, I'm just telling reality and the truth. I'm not telling it like I'm egoed out that, you know, John Bonham listened to me. I'm just telling the truth, you know. And years ago, when I used to tell the truth like that, people would, you know, say that I'm an egomaniac and, you know, that I'm saying I taught him everything he knows. I never said that, you know. I mean, I never said that ever. And but then a book came out called The Thunder of Drums that Chris Welch wrote. And Chris interviewed John, you know, many, many times and found out that he used to listen to my music. And after that first tour, he came back raving about how excited he was that he was touring with Vanilla Fudge and watching me every night. And him and Cozy Powell raving to each other about it, you know, talking to each other about it. And, you know, because they were both from Birmingham. And they sort of grew up in the same, like I grew up with Dino Dinelli, those two grew up around the same scene. So when that book came out, it sort of set the record straight so that when I talked about it, and then I still didn't talk about it until like Rhythm Magazine and Modern Drummer would say the man that influenced John Bonham, Carmine Appice. And now I'm not saying it. So it makes it okay.
That's right.
You know?
And obviously, you know, that ship has sailed. I don't think the Zeppelin is going to fly again, but would you have taken that gig if you got offered it?
Oh, definitely. Definitely. Because, you know, at the time when that happened, you know, a lot of the stuff that Bonzo played was played number one on the big drums that he got, you know, from me. And the gong and everything, you know, I had the gong and he got the gong. Then he was the first one to get the new pasty gong stand, the big ones behind him. Then I think I was the second one. You know, and I got a bigger gong then. You know.
Can I also ask, when was the last time you saw John, and what was that interaction like?
It's hard to say. Probably 1979. You know, probably maybe a year before he died. They were exiled to L.A. for a while. You know, so I used to see him quite a bit out here. You know, and but he was always a good guy to me. You know, even when he was drunk, when he was badass as hell, when he was drunk, always treated me with respect. I always loved him for it, and he was always a good guy. You know, I never had any problems with him ever. You know, we never argued, we never had a fight. You know, and he used to come watch me play, and you know, he came to a drum clinic I did in New Jersey one time. At Sam Ash, he showed up, and and he had a beer in his hand, and he left the bottle there. They still have the bottle.
Is that right? Yeah.
It's the bottle that John Bonham drank from at the Carmine Appice Drum Clinic. You know, it's classic stuff.
I can't imagine showing up to a drum clinic and having Carmine Appice and John Bonham there. That's incredible.
Yeah, I know.
Awesome.
Yeah, that is amazing.
Being a classic rock geek myself, one of the immediate stories that I've heard about for nearly 30 years, I know it's longer than that, but I went straight to the Zeppelin Seattle Pop Festival Mud Shark story, of course, right? So I'm not going to give any spoilers, because if you want to read the book, you get it, stick it. It's a fantastic book. The only question that I had that I came away from it with is, and I will tell you, it was way more than I'd ever heard the legendary story to be. People will make their own.
Well, that's why we put it in there, because all the other stories didn't really have the story.
Yeah.
You know, and it, you know, I mean, when you read a story like that, you got to remember it's a whole different era. Everybody looked at sex differently. Every woman that was involved in all these crazy stories did it on their own accord. They wanted to do it. They were never forced to do it. And today, it's different. You got to understand another thing. Back in those days, like 68, 69, the birth control pill had just come out, not much, you know, further before that, you know. And basically, women were just getting their sexuality explored for the first time in history. So they were like, like guys.
Right. Sexual revolution, the swinging 60s, the 70s.
It was love and peace, and there was no AIDS, there was no diseases. Right. If you got the only disease you can get rid of it with a penicillin shot. Right. It was free love everywhere. It was a whole different attitude and lifestyle. So that thing that happened was really crazy. I mean, it actually grossed me out too. At the end, and it was in my room, and I had to leave my room. Right. But it did happen, and it became a legendary story that was on VH1. It was on MTV. It was on TV shows. It was on the shocking moments of rock and roll, and and I've always got asked about it. And when we wrote it, I told my writer, I said, "What do you think?" I mean, we actually toned it down a little bit.
Did you? Yeah. Wow.
Yeah, because it was so outrageous that I had to tone it down a bit because I couldn't even read it. Yeah. My girlfriend won't even read that,
Right. Yeah.
But,
so definitely.
But what we tried to do with the book is give you a real look at what it was like being a rock star when rock stars were being born.
Right. Right.
At the beginning of it all.
That's right.
And groupies were being born. They had movies about groupies. Right. We knew all these groupies. Some of them we started off as being a groupie. Right. But it was a whole different scene, a whole different everything.
Yeah, definitely wild rock and roll times. My only question that I won't have any spoilers because people have heard this is, was the mud shark, where I've always heard it was a red snapper, but was the mud shark still alive at this point throughout the whole thing?
Probably not.
Probably not. Okay, got it.
I might have been. I mean, let's put it this way. The room next to where we were was our road crew, John Bonham, his wife, Richard Cole, fishing out the window, and they had the bathtub full of fish.
Right.
Okay,
you could fish right out the dock, right? Right out the window.
Right out the window.
Right out the window.
Right out the dock. Yeah. The hotel was built on the dock.
Wow.
So you open your window, there was the water. Yeah. And they give you fishing poles. They rent to fish out. So their bathtub was filled with a few different fish, and so it came right from the bathtub to the next room. So, after how long does it take a fish to die?
Right.
Great. I don't know.
Yeah. One last Bonham question, and then I want to move on. Is you talked about it's such a different time back then to now. And back then, certainly, alcohol and drugs were much more, people were experimenting, much more excess. There were no treatment options, none of that stuff. Were there ever thoughts, whether it was John Bonham or somebody else, that, hey, there's got to be a line here. It's cool to party and have fun, but where was the line, if there was ever, that anyone would ever say, hey, buddy, I'm concerned about you, maybe chill out tonight? I
mean, there's been a line. I never had that line with John Bonham, but I had that line with Tommy Bolin.
Yeah.
Last time I saw Tommy Bolin was in a rehearsal. Mark Stein was playing with him. I went down, and Tommy was so out of it that, we said to him, I said, dude, you got to stop doing this stuff. You're going to kill yourself. And now on that tour, he killed himself.
Right.
But the only other one was John's son, Jason. Jason was following the footsteps of his dad, drinking a lot, doing all the drugs, and I saw him at a NAMM show one time, and I laced into him because I knew him when he was a baby. I knew his John's wife. I knew Jason when he was young. In fact, John Bonham gave him my realistic rock book to his son. When he was a kid. But and when I saw him, I said, dude, you got to stop doing this. Your father killed himself by doing this. You want to do the same thing? I know you want to follow in his footsteps, but you don't want to follow those ones. Something along those lines. I said he wouldn't be happy seeing you like this. Something along those lines. I was talking to him at the NAMM show, and then, I don't know how long after that it was, but I'm sure it was maybe me and other people telling him, and made him just draw the line and go step on the other side.
Right. Yeah.
And now he's straight. He doesn't do anything.
Yeah, clearly made a difference because he's
Yeah.
talks about not doing any of that stuff today. That's great.
Exactly.
It's awesome. Can we talk about, going back to Seattle for a second, the story that gets actually forgotten in that legendary story, as you talk about in your book, was the reason you were there in the first place, the Seattle Pop Festival with incredible artists. They don't make festivals like this anymore, Carmine. It was you, the Vanilla Fudge, Zeppelin, The Doors, Santana, Alice Cooper, Ike and Tina Turner, 50,000 people. What was that? Yeah. Was Hendrix there too?
That's right. I think, I'm not sure if he was there. Okay. He usually was at all the festivals that we did, and he might have been there. Yeah. But, when we played, Led Zeppelin guys were hanging around. When they played, we hung around. It's just the way it was at the festival. But, we didn't like, that year was the year they did Woodstock. Yeah. And we were asked to do Woodstock by our agent, and we didn't want to do it because we had just done like 2 or 3 festivals that summer, and it was so hard to get in and out of. You'd have to take a helicopter, a big old helicopter in, and then sometimes you'd have to wait 2 or 3 hours for the helicopter to leave if you wanted to leave, and you couldn't leave because there was too much traffic, and you couldn't go in any other way, so it was a big hassle. Sure. So that's why sometimes you'd go and you'd just stay there all day and watch everybody. Right. I know when we were playing, Jim Morrison was on the right side where Mark Stein was, and he was almost right behind Mark Stein watching. And but it's so funny because these people to us were just other musicians, other people in other bands, and then they died, and they become these untouchable icons. That people look at them like they were never human beings, right. But, Morrison and John Bonham and Jimi Hendrix and Janis Joplin, they were all real people. All real people. We used to know and we used to tour with and we used to hang out with and have a laugh and have a drink and,
Yeah. Can you share some of those real people experiences that you may have had with Jim Morrison, Janis Joplin, Jimi Hendrix?
Well, Jim Morrison wasn't too much like Mark Stein has more stories about Jim, but like Janis Joplin, we played a festival that had Miami Pop Festival, and we were the headliners, and under us was Janis Joplin and Johnny Winter. And when we were on, both of them came up to play a blues with us, right? And Janis was singing, and when the guitar solo came, she came around to me, and she goes, "Hey, drummer boy," and she put her arm around me and said, "Have a swig of this," and she shoved this Southern Comfort in my face and then tipped the bottle up, so there was no way I could avoid it,
And you still had to play the drums.
And I was still playing. I took a big chunk of that, a slug of that, and I went like, whoa, right. I almost stopped playing, and, and then we finished the song, and we'd go all back to the hotel, and we'd be in the bar, and we'd be drinking, and, it's just normal stuff, Right.
You talked about, especially like a real person, your affinity for Jimmy James, Jimi Hendrix, and you had a long connection with him. Can you talk about him and your relationship, your experiences with him?
Well, he was always a very timid, very soft-spoken guy because when he got on stage, he let it all out, And the first one was when we were up in that prostitute's apartment talking. Next time I met him, we were in the London Speakeasy, and he was there. And I knew it was Jimi Hendrix was Jimmy James because I saw pictures of him playing with his teeth, which he always did. And when I went into the restaurant area, I said, "Jimmy, it's Carmine from Thursday's Children. We played back in New York many times." And he said, "Oh, yeah." I said, now I realize you're Jimi Hendrix. I saw pictures of you, and you were Jimmy James at the time. He said, "Yeah." He said, "What are you doing?" I said, "I play in Vanilla Fudge." And he said, "Oh, I love the Fudge,"
Very cool.
And, and then we sort of became friends, and we did lots of gigs together with the Fudge. We did lots of gigs together with Cactus. At the Isle of Wight, that was the last gig he played. We played as well, and we were there. I don't remember if it was the day he played, or I think it was the day he played that we played. or maybe we played and he didn't, but he was hanging around. Like I said, you go to there, but what else are you going to do?
Right.
You like to hear the music, and see everybody play. Yeah. And it's like when you go on a cruise now. You go on a cruise and everybody's playing. You go see everybody play.
That's right.
Otherwise, what are you going to do? Sit in the sun,
Right.
So we, Jim McCarty was a really good friend of Jimi Hendrix because he was in the Buddy Miles Express and Jimi Hendrix produced that band. And so you got to know Jimmy really well. As a matter of fact, Jimi Hendrix gave Jim McCarty a set of lyrics handwritten by Jimmy that McCarty sold years later for many, many thousands of dollars, to a collector. And the night of, they were jamming in the dressing room, on acoustic guitars, Jimmy and two Jimmys. And we were hanging out backstage, and it was like maybe 4 days later he was dead.
Wow. That was the last time you saw him then?
That was the last time we saw him.
Yeah. How would you describe his mood?
Jimi Hendrix.
Yeah.
Normal.
Having
Soft
fun
spoken,
playing guitar. Yeah.
doing drugs, drinking, some wine, I don't know. Yeah, those festivals, you don't know what you take. You take a slug of wine and it has acid in it. Right. They have punch, you have LSD, and it has mescaline in it or something. It's happened many times for me, Yeah.
And unknowingly.
Unknowingly, yeah. Like in Puerto Rico when we were playing with Cactus, there was Rod and the Faces, ELP, all the big groups of the day. And, we went to the festival the night before, as I just said. Yeah. We hung out, took some slugs of the punch, had mescaline in it.
Yikes. Wow.
We were up all night. We had to go on like in mid-afternoon. I was still high.
Sure.
Still didn't sleep, and I was like, out of it. Wow. I had suicide thoughts that night.
Really?
I think I read it in the book. It's in the book. I was out on the balcony. Me and the lead singer used to room together, and we had these two girls that were twins. And so after we were sort of done having a sexual party, I went out on the balcony myself, and I might have had a brandy and Coke, which I used to drink in those days. Not a lot, but I have one drink maybe. And I'm saying, oh, look at it. And I'm feeling from the mescaline, I'm feeling my blood going through my veins, and I'm thinking, all I got to do is get up on the chair and just jump off that balcony, get smashed on the rocks, and it's over.
Wow. Amazing.
And I'm thinking to myself, I'm going to go inside.
Right. Yeah. It's time to get inside. Thankfully, that
so
didn't
I went inside.
Yeah.
But, it's like really weird thoughts. And then next day we played, And they recorded it live, and it came out on an album. But it kicked ass.
Incredible. Yeah, and obviously such a tragic loss with Jimi Hendrix. The other story that you talked about in your book that I was really blown away by, you were part of a group that he invited people to listen to the brand new, at the time, Electric Ladyland album.
That's right.
Talk about hearing All Along the Watchtower for the first time, the other songs from that album. What was that like?
Well, in those days, it wasn't like one song.
Yeah.
You just put the record on.
Right. Yeah.
And we listened to the whole thing. And he sat in the corner, like very timid and, was grooving. But, you could tell he was looking for the reactions, But everybody loved it, And he did it more than once. Because I did it one time and in Seattle. And Mark Stein remembers doing it somewhere else with him.
Okay.
So, I guess it's it's like any musician, in the day, you're proud of your new product. You want other people to hear it, to see what their reaction is,
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I wish we would have done that with Vanilla Fudge's second album, and we never would have released it.
No. Is that one you wish you could take back?
Oh, it was horrible. The Beat Goes Down. It was a concept album, no music on it. You go on YouTube and listen to some of it, and you'll see what I'm talking about. It killed our career. It really killed our career. That's why all the other bands, Hendrix and Cream and all the other bands, got bigger than we were, because instead of doing like we did on the first album, same thing, second album, which would have been the same thing, would have been a hit.
Right.
It's like, McDonald's saying, I got a hit hamburger, now I'm going to make a tuna sandwich.
Right. Right.
They stayed with the hamburgers.
Yeah. So
we didn't. We stayed with the formula that our producer, Shadow Morton, and Ahmet Erdogan thought was a great idea for this concept record, which would have been a great idea for like the 8th record, not your second record.
Right.
You want to get the band big first and established.
Sure.
Big mistake.
And so was that part of the disillusionment then for you with Vanilla Fudge, and then eventually?
It started it.
Okay.
Because we had to rush in and do another record to save our ass.
Got it.
We rushed in and did another record. And the only cover we did, and then we wrote songs because everybody was going, these guys suck. They don't write their own song. But if you listen to our arrangements have been used in movies without the song, right. Because of the music. So we wrote great music, that went hooked on to other songs that we changed anyway. Right. And we even changed chord structures on the music of the songs that we played. But we did an album like that, and it did okay. It went up to, I think, top 15, but we didn't get a hit single off it, where we could have had a hit single if we had redone some of the stuff like we did before,
sure.
But then we had a rush, and then we did the next album. That was a rush, and that did well too, but none of them went gold, no platinum except the first one, So that's how we knew that so by the time we did the fourth album, then music was changing. Led Zeppelin came out, the organ was going away, all the guitar stuff was coming in. And then we got word from John Bonham told me that Jeff Beck wanted to play with me and Tim, and we were going to use Rod Stewart as a singer. Yeah. So we said, wow, and those were the days of supergroups.
Right.
Blind Faith came out, and West Bruce and Lang. Sure. So we were going to do this group, and it was going to be called Cactus.
Yeah.
But then Jeff Beck got in a car wreck, and Rod didn't want to work with Jeff anymore anyway because some financial problems there. And so we ended up doing Cactus with McCarty and Rusty Day, which did fairly well around the world too.
Yes. How would you sum up your time, a word, a sentence, a feeling that comes up around Cactus for you?
A kick-ass band that really influenced a lot of bands, like AC/DC, Van Halen, King's X, Ronnie James Dio, just to name a few that I know of, Whitesnake.
That's great. Yeah, so another huge influence.
Yeah.
And you also did get a chance to play with Jeff Beck. Can we talk about the ups and downs of that experience?
Well, the ups are great playing and some fun times. But Jeff was a very different kind of person. He was a little introverted, a little insecure at the times, but when we're up, it was up. When it's down, it was down. Like we did the second album twice, and still never came out, And then the band broke up. Yeah.
If I remember,
but it left a mark.
No question, it did. Right. So, just curious. I mean, Jeff Beck is, without question, no doubt, one of the best guitarists that's ever lived on the planet. Virtuoso guitarist.
Well, rock guitarist.
Rock guitarist, no question. Yes, understood.
I mean, he himself says he's not a jazz player,
right.
Like McLaughlin, those guys.
Yeah.
But he is a unique, amazing rock guitarist. Of the three that came out of the Yardbirds, for me, he's the best.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because he could play anything, and he plays with humor, and he plays with confidence. And he doesn't use a pick anymore.
Right.
It's just awesome. Right. And, and I helped, I was involved in the switch over from BBA to Blow by Blow. There's a song on our BBA that we used to do on the second album called Jizz Whiz that was on the Beckology album. Okay. It's like a bridge between the two. It, started off in 13/8, then it went to 6/8 and 3/4. Wow. And it was all jamming, it was instrumental. And, after BBA broke up, I spent time in London recording and arranging and writing songs with Jeff, which was going to become Blow by Blow. Right. Again, people may say, oh, your ego went out, but I'm just telling the truth. Yeah. And I used to listen in the car with Jeff, Ma Vishna and Billy Cobham, and he loved it. But I turned him on to that stuff. He didn't hear it yet, and we used to drive together in the car, and Tim and would drive together with the tour manager. In Europe, we'd take cars, we'd drive 2 rent-a-cars, and the road crew would have a truck, and Jeff liked to drive, and I liked to drive, and we'd listen to music. And I would listen to Billy Cobham and Ma Vishna and Chick Corea and all that stuff. because I loved that stuff, and it influenced me, so it influenced him. And so we were writing a record, and I played on 5 or 6, 7 tracks with George Martin. But then we couldn't work out a deal. Yeah. So my managers told me I should not play sideman to Jeff Beck and not play on the album. I never even got paid a dime for it. I was over there for 3 months.
Yikes.
Yeah. And I co-wrote songs that I didn't get the credit on either. And then that album comes out and sells 2 million and starts a whole new career for Jeff.
Yeah. Yeah, that's certainly one of the downs that you talked about in the ups and downs of your career, right?
Yeah.
With all due respect, with Jeff, you called him enigmatic in your book. What do you think that was all about, some of those ups and downs? Was that just the youth?
That's just the way Jeff was, He was. I was always the middle guy between Jeff and Tim. They were always, at odds with something, And Jeff was a nice guy, basically, I got along with him great. But I find a lot of English guitar players have the same traits,
Which are?
Which are like, be insecure, but being insecure and egotistical at the same time, and that, won't do this unless it's absolutely perfect or, and then not wanting to do this or wanting to do that all of a sudden out of the blue, But, I found that with a bunch of English guitar players I work with, but Jeff was unique. He was one of the greats, always been one of the greats, and he'd been lucky because there were time spans where he wouldn't release an album for 7 years. Right. Most other artists would die, 7 years, but his audience stayed with him, even today. Yep. And today he's, there was a point in time like in the '90s. I talked to Jeff, and I would, every time he come from L.A. and New York, I'd hang out with him, But he wouldn't call me. I'd always call him because he hates the phone. Okay. He's one of these guys that don't like the phone. But he loved cars. I love cars, so we got along. Great. I was very disappointed when that album. I had to go off that album. Sure. And I was really disappointed when it sold 2 million. I was pissed off. Right. Because it started a whole new career that I could have been involved in, But I get what they meant, His manager and lawyer said, you're equal bill with Jeff, and now you're going to be a sideman. It's not good for my career, which really didn't help make a difference to me because after that, I didn't do anything till I did the Rod Stewart group, which I wasn't Rod Stewart and Carmine Appice anyway. Right. But I did have my name on the drums all the time.
That's right. Well, that was another upswing of your career, though, landing the gig
big time
with Rod Stewart. And how long had you been writing songs before you wrote with Rod?
Well, I wrote songs all through my career. The first one I wrote was '68 with Vanilla Fudge. Okay. On the Renaissance album, I wrote 2 songs. Yeah. Well, 1.5. Mark Stein wrote 1/2 with me. Okay. On the Near the Beginning album, I wrote. Same thing, I co-wrote with Mark on that album. And then with Cactus, we co-wrote all the songs together. And that was like 3 or 4 albums. And then KGB, that was with BBA. I co-wrote songs, and I wrote one of the songs all myself. But I gave them credit to try and keep the band together. Right. And but I co-wrote a bunch of the songs on that. And then after that, with Rod, we co-wrote a few songs as a band, and then Rod asked us all to go home and come back with a song that would, in the Tempo of Missing You by the Rolling Stones. Mm. Yeah. And he wanted a song like that, and I won. Right. I wrote it on the keyboard. I went to my buddy Dwayne's house. He had a little studio with a keyboard and an 8-track, and he made it sound good. So I gave him a piece of my end of the song because he made it sound good. Okay. And then we wrote it, and it became Rod's biggest selling song ever. Okay.
And this is Do You Think I'm Sexy?
Do You Think I'm Sexy?
This is probably no deeper meaning, but what was the story or inspiration of this song?
Well, that's Rod. Rod wrote lyrics. I never write lyrics. Okay. I wrote music.
You wrote the music. So, got it.
Yeah, you would have to ask him.
Got it.
But
Okay.
no, it's just a story. He was a great storyteller.
Right.
It's a story about a guy who goes to a club and sees a chick, and and they start talking, and do you think I'm sexy? It's like what was on their mind.
Right. Exactly. Is it accurate, the story that I read? If I read it correctly, when you wrote this, it was more of a harder rock song. Do you think that's
originally it was 3 guitars, bass drums, and a keyboard, which is pretty rock.
Yeah.
But then Tom Dowd, the producer, put orchestra on it and put chicks singing high harmonies. And had David Foster on it, and he had I forgot who the sax player was. Anyway, a named sax player played the solo, and before you know it, we had 2 reels of 48 tracks of crap on it. So by the time you get all that down to a 2-track, and on a vinyl, something's got to suffer. So the big sound we had suffered, and it came more like a disco-ish song, disco rock song. But, it influenced Kiss to write their hit disco song and a few other ones. But I took the original rock arrangement. At the time, I was producing a Japanese singer, and I took the original rock arrangement we did, and I made another song out of it with her called I Just Fell in Love Again. And it's a lot heavier and a lot more rock.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Have to check that out. Excellent.
Yeah.
How did you feel about the song from when you wrote it to the way it turned out?
I mean, come on. It was #1 in 10 countries. How are you going to feel about it?
Right. Yeah.
I was so happy and proud. Like, oh, my God, I wrote a #1 song.
Sure.
And then we did Young Turks. Me and Dwayne did that together. And with the new style, with the Oberheim drum machine and me playing hi-hat and cymbals. And that whole sound was on Young Turks and Tonight I'm Yours, which was the sound that came out of Dwayne's studio. And it was awesome. Now that was a #4 single.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
One of the Facebook questions that I got, because I put it on my page, Carmine, on Musicians on the Record, that we were going to talk and interview, and one of the questions that I got was, from your days playing with Rod, touring with him, what story or stories immediately come to mind about that?
Well, everything was an event. Anytime we did a gig, it was an event, and it was sold out. And they wouldn't even book the gig unless they knew it would sell out. And if it didn't sell out, they would do something like have the roadies wreck a hotel room, get arrested, so there's press on TV, and it would sell out. And he told me, when I was doing drum clinics, to make an event out of it. Don't just do a drum clinic, make it an event bigger than life. And I did. And I learned a lot about songwriting, a lot about image,
Would you say that was the most successful time of your career?
Totally.
Yeah.
Totally.
Yeah.
It was the most successful time in his career, too.
Right.
Because it was, we knew every time he'd release an album, he'd say it was 5 million records.
Right.
And Sexy that album sold 10 million copies around the world, and the single did 2 million here alone. Yeah. It was the biggest thing he ever did.
Yeah, no question, a great part of his career as well. So it made me wonder even because he wrote the foreword to your book, Stick It.
Yes.
And he even said, I have no idea why I let Carmine go. So what happened with all of that? You guys were having major... Drugs. Okay.
Because at one point, 1980, he got rid of the whole Rod Stewart group for some reason. I don't know why. But he kept me. And he said, well, what should you do? I had Danny Johnson and Jay Davis playing with me on my solo album, which came out on Rod's label. Okay? He had his own label, and his manager signed me, and they gave me the budget, and I was recording, and I played some of the tracks to Rod. He loved it, and he said, who's the bass player and guitar player? And I told him, he said, well, let's get him with us. So we got them two, and then we thought it might be good to keep one of the guitar players that was in the band because they knew all the chord changes, all the keys, so we got Jim Cregan back, and then eventually we got Kevin Savagar back, but then we needed another guy, and we got this guy, Robin LeMazier, so So everybody was English except me, Danny, and Jay, right? And then that album, the Young Turks album, I was getting into more production, and I said, Rod said, I'm going to produce it, but you and Jim can co-produce it. I said, great. So for me being a co-producer, I didn't mind. On all of Rod's album, they always brought like another drummer in to do a couple of ballads or something, But the songs that were never released as a single, and wasn't really part of the band. But it was just a lighter touch. And I was fine with that. It's his band. A lot of guys like that never even use their band to record, and we were lucky. We were treated like a band. And so he wanted to bring someone like Tony Brock in to play a couple of tracks. I said, okay. So I sat in the studio like the producer. And I said, no, let's do another one. That wasn't good. It just didn't have a good feel,
Yeah.
Blah, blah. So Tony played on some of the tracks. And I played on some of the tracks. And then, when Tony was around, and there was the English ones outweighed the Americans. And they were always in the pub drinking and doing coke. And Jim was always in Rod's ear about me because he was always jealous of me. Because after Rod's name, I was the biggest name. And I did all the press on the road that Rod didn't want to do. And the publicist told me, you do it all. I said, fine. And I got a lot of press, and I got my solo spot. And, I was being Carmine Appice,
Right. You
what I do.
that. Yeah, you were.
So he was jealous of it, and he was on the coke talking into Rod's ear. So first thing Rod said, you know what? I'm blowing out your co-production credit. I'm giving it to Jim. I said, oh, what? And I felt something was happening. And then somewhere along the line, and when I was on the road with Rod, before we started recording that album, the rumors were going that I was going to join Led Zeppelin, and he heard about it. And he said, are you planning to join? I said, no. I said, it's just a rumor. He goes, that's good because there's a rumor that I'm going to retire after this tour. We said, let's keep the rumor going. They'll sell more tickets. I said, okay. So I kept it going. He kept it going,
Yeah.
And so then Billy Gaff, his manager, calls my manager and says, Rod wants to fire Carmine, or Rod's firing Carmine, or whatever, releasing Carmine, or whatever. And he goes, what do you mean? He goes, yeah, well, Rod said that Carmine's going to join Led Zeppelin, so he doesn't want to, anybody that's going to leave him. And my manager said, well, what are you talking about? He's not joining Led Zeppelin. But they just want to, the clique, the English clique, the drinking, so they brought Tony Brock in. So I got screwed out of the tour. But on the album cover, it's funny because the album cover, we all had these English sailor suits on, like sailor jacket. And I was sitting there was this 4 guys up there, and me and Rod down here. Rod's got his arm around me, like that. And we're both smiling. So after the first million sales, they took my head and face off, and they put Tony Brock's face on my body.
Oh, no. Jeez.
If you look at that and you see the one with Tony Brock, you can see that's on my body.
That's ridiculous.
And then Rod was all,
Yeah.
and then I released my solo album right after that on his label, and he's out there saying, oh, you can't trust a drummer that has a name on the drums. I said, what the hell does that mean?
Right.
And we were at odds for a minute, for about a year, but I was on his label,
Sure. Sure, right.
And then that calmed down, and and then I don't remember how it calmed down. But then even the crazy one was when Jeff Beck ended up in the same hotel as us in Australia, and they were at total enemies, and I got them together.
Right. So playing Peacemaker on that one, right?
I was total Peacemaker on that one. And then we were initial, me and Dwayne were initial in doing People Get Ready. Because Jeff came to my house and stood with me for 2 weeks. Oh. We hung out, we partied, we went to the Rainbow every night, just hung out, didn't play a note of music, just friends, He's driving in my Pantera and driving in my sports cars, and, we're hanging around Hollywood with all the chicks and having a great time. I was divorced at the time. I had my big house. And then he said, hey, where can we do some music? So I said, let's go to Dwayne's house. went to Dwayne. He still has a studio, and we started playing these chords, and it ended up, that lick and people get ready, do 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 do. That was Dwayne's lick.
Wow.
It wasn't Jeff's lick. It was Dwayne.
It's amazing.
And we arranged it, put it all together, and then I said, you know what? It sounds like People Get Ready. And I started singing because I sang that with the Fudge. And Jeff says, yeah, you're right. So Jeff said, what do you think about, because now Jeff had met Rod in Australia, and they were sort of friends again. He said, maybe we can get Rod to sing on it. I said, yeah, that's a good idea. So we called Rod's house, and we went to Dan Tanner's and met Rod. We had a cassette. We played him the cassette. Rod said, yeah. A week later, we were all in the studio. And Jeff was staying at my house.
Right. It's incredible. So you guys all made peace at some point, right?
Yeah, it was all peace. It was great.
Yeah.
But then when it came out, me and Dwayne didn't even get a mention.
Oh, geez.
Again.
Again.
So every time I seem to work with Jeff, I get screwed. But,
Thanks.
but we stayed friends.
Yeah. That's what I got in your book, too, is even through the ups and downs, you guys have stayed friends. Do you see him ever? Do you talk with him at all?
I mean, I talked to him a couple of months ago when we were working on this live record we're talking about. And but he's on tour now, and I tried to, he was playing New York when I was leaving to go play with the Rascals. The tour manager said, yeah, Jeff wants you to come see him. And I said, no, I'm going to be out of town. I said, well, what about, let's do a phone call, Mm-hmm. I know he hates the phone. So we never got the phone call, So I might call him at home, when I know he gets home. I'll give him a week to relax, and I'll call him and,
Sure.
And just say hello.
Sure. How do you approach drumming differently today, if any?
I know different.
Yeah, just hitting it as hard as ever.
I still play the same. I mean, I play, let's put it this way, I don't play as much as I played like with BBA and Cactus.
Yeah.
As many notes all the time.
Yeah.
But I play still with a lot of energy and a lot of fills, and my fills can be as intricate as the job calls for. Right. Like with the Rascals, I don't do as intricate fills as what I do with Cactus.
Sure.
Because Cactus is more of a jam band, and it's like showing off your playing, kind of,
Yeah, and different.
The Rascals, it's all about the songs and the groove and the drive.
Sure.
Pushing the band, driving the band,
Yeah, and serving the song, right? Different songs call for different drums, right? Yeah.
Right, yeah. So, but basically on all the things I've done in my life, I've never really changed my style. I've catered to the music with my style, but I never really changed, I never changed from playing with the butt end. Right. I never changed from playing match grip. I never changed from playing, light. I've always hit them pretty hard. Yeah. And that's how you get the sound out of the drums,
Right. Well, and it's rock, and it's realistic rock. Can we talk for a second about, it's a legendary book, your ultimate realistic rock book.
Right.
Yeah. What inspired this, and, how did you come up with this?
Well, being a drummer that studied all my life, I didn't study all my life, but I studied. And I've went to different lessons with different name guys in the city, Cactus. What is his name? I went to a lesson with Tony Williams once,
Really? Wow.
Yeah, and he was my friend, and I went anyway. But so I'd always go into I lived in Long Island. There was two Sam Ash stores at the time, one in Brooklyn, one in Long Island. And I used to go into the Long Island store and just go to the book section and look at what drum books are being published, because I went to all the classic books, and I was always looking for new ideas. And I saw this one book. It said, "Learn rock and roll drumming." And this is 1971. We all looked like hippies with beards and long hair and tie-dyed stuff. And there was a guy on the cover like this, with his hair combed back like Elvis, wearing like an Elvis kind of shirt. And I said, what the hell is this? It was written by Joel Rothman, I think. And I looked at it and I said, oh, this material is so outdated and wrong. I mean, you'll never use this. You'll never do this groove. You'll never use this. So I said, I'm going to write a book. I'm going to write a book. I'm going to write it like the Chapin book, where it's nice and clean. And I'm going to write it with rhythms that a guy can go through the book and go right into playing with a band. and I'm going to have some drum fills in it and everything. So it took me 30 days with Cactus to write it. And in the days of writing it, I did it instead of partying every night with the band. I'd go to my room and I'd write for 2 hours. And then I go party, And then I ended up with this book.
It's amazing.
I gave it to my attorney, who was at the time Led Zeppelin's attorney, the Rascals, Jimi Hendrix, Vanilla Fudge. He did have Herman's Hermits, the Yardbirds, all the big bands in those days. And I gave it to him, and he got me a book deal on Robin's Big Three books, and it had the spiral.
Yeah.
And it had the drawing on the cover of a painting that's on the cover now.
Wow.
That was a drawing of that painting that a girlfriend of mine did of me.
Is that right?
Like a caricature of me.
Yeah.
At the time. And then when I started changing drum company, I said, I can't keep changing covers every time I change a company. Like the Ludwig drums were on there for 20 years. Then I went with Mapex and Pearl, and I said, you know what, I'm going to just put a generic cover on. So I used the actual painting.
Okay.
Took a picture of the painting, and we used that. That's been on there for probably since 2005.
Love it.
I love it. And he said, hey, here's a book deal, here's $500 advance, and you own the copyright. I didn't even know what that meant at the time. That was, I don't know how old I was. I was 71. I was 26 years old. I didn't know from copyrights. All I knew about was going on the road, playing, doing records, picking up chicks and having a good time. Copyright, what's that?
Right.
But I found out later in years, it meant a lot.
It's a good deal, right?
Made me a lot of money.
Yeah, great.
Over the years.
Yeah.
Because I owned the copyright.
Right. And still going strong today?
It's still going. I don't know how strong. The strongest was probably in 2000, 2001 was my strongest sales. But it has sold 400,000 over the 40 years it's been out. Wow. But now, the internet, people rip it off. We try and stop him. I downloaded a copy of my Realistic Rock in 18 seconds.
Wow.
And on the site, I saw that it was downloaded 1,500 times. So that, to me, was a big chunk of royalty out the window.
No question.
Instead of selling an average 8,000 to 10,000 a year, now I'm lucky if it sells 4,000 a year. Right. But it's still selling.
Right. Yeah. I bought a copy, by the way. I have a copy, which I bought. Didn't steal that.
Thank you.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. Well, this leads me to a question around the music business, and obviously things have changed. Seems like no other business. I mean, what do you make of all of this stuff? Oh
man, the musicians are getting ripped off big time. Number one, with the Spotify and the YouTube and everything, nobody's getting paid any money. Right. There's no record sales anymore. Right. There's no CDs being sold. Right. The vinyls that are being are selling, but they're not like the vinyls that used to sell. You sell 1 million vinyls. Right. A big selling vinyl now is like 50, 60,000. A big selling record is, number one record is probably 100,000 records. If you can reach that point, you're number one. Right. So there's no royalties anymore on writing. I mean, my songwriting royalties from Do You Think I'm Sexy until recently were huge every year. And then in the last 5 years, 8 years, it dwindled down to almost what I was making with my drum book, And it used to be like 20 times my drum book,
Yeah.
So, it's all changed. So, for me personally, I sold my songs back to the publishers, except for ASCAP. ASCAP's the only thing that still makes money. Okay. The airplay. Yeah. But and a lot of musicians are getting their copyrights back on albums. Like I've gotten a bunch back on my King Cobra records and stuff. But you got it back. You can't really do anything with it because there's nobody buying records anymore.
Right. Yeah.
And I feel bad for musicians coming up. I don't know how. First of all, I don't know how a band gets big today. I used to know in the old days how a band gets big, how to get signed, and I didn't even know how a band gets signed unless I took a band I produced up to Atlantic Records, and they said, well, if you get 500,000 Facebook and 500,000 YouTubes, then we'll sign them. I go, well, what do we need you for then? Right. He said, well, then we'll take it from there and we'll turn it into millions. Okay, but how does a band unknown get 500,000 Facebook, 500,000 YouTubes,
right?
And then
Yep.
And how do they get known? I mean, I remember years ago, the first time I experienced this was I read in the Village Voice, this band sold out the Garden one night. They added a second night, right? And I read the name of the band. I said, I never heard of them. They were called the Black Keys.
Sure, right.
And now you heard of them.
Yes, right.
Only because they sold out the Garden. I would have never heard of them if I didn't read that.
Right.
And then I went on YouTube and researched them, and I didn't know any of their songs. Usually you sell out the Garden twice, you know the songs. Usually you got a few smash records.
Right, sure.
Not anymore.
Yeah.
I don't know how it works.
Yeah. So what's your take on a band like Greta Van Fleet or these other young rock bands?
Lucky.
Yeah. Right.
Lucky.
Yeah.
But they're not selling records.
Right.
They're selling Spotify and YouTube. My friends, they're publicists. As a matter of fact, not an ego story again, but their drummer, she told me his biggest mentor was me.
That's awesome.
And they even do Cactus Evil when they play live. Yeah.
That's great.
But they were playing in LA and they wanted me to come down. And I read in Rolling Stone that their influences were, I forgot who they said, so-and-so, and Carmine Appice of Vanilla Fudge. And I was like blown away. And I had never heard of them then. Right. And then I found out my friends, their PR person, and she told me the whole story. Wow. They get signed on a demo. Yeah. Yeah. So I think you're going to see a lot of that going on now. Like I have a young band I'm working with that's doing the same thing with Van Halen.
Yeah. So more of a Van Halen sound with them.
Yeah.
Yeah. And what's their name and what are they doing?
Well, they're working on demos. I'm working with them, and I'm turning them on to tomorrow we have a conference call with a manager who's very, very good friends with the guy that signed Greta Van Fleet. Okay. So, but I don't know if we have the right songs yet, but we're going to work with them and try and get them signed.
Okay. Yeah, it could be the next.
Because it happens, its history repeats itself.
That's right.
When Motley Crue became big, the record company signed everything from LA that sounded like Motley Crue or heavy metal.
That's right.
And the labels, this manager told me, the labels are already thinking this.
Right. Do you think that ship has already sailed, music business-wise? That's not coming back. We have to adapt to something different at this point.
Yeah, it's done.
Yeah.
Done. Yeah. It's not going to be a Beatles again.
Right.
It's not going to be another Led Zeppelin. Yeah. I mean, the closest thing. There's not. The closest thing that there is to that is like Foo Fighters. Right. They were at the tail end of that.
That's right. That's right. They were already going.
But all the big rock groups. There's no big rock groups selling out big venues by themselves. I mean, maybe the Foo Fighters might. Right. But I don't know if the other ones that sell it. But then again, I don't know half these bands anyway. Right. I never heard of half these bands. Right.
Do you have any favorite drummers of today?
It's hard to say because there's no new drum heroes. Yeah. Right. Right. I mean, there's all these guys in these the Metallica kind of spin-offs of Metallica with their fast bass drums, right. And like Avenged Sevenfold, for instance, their original drummer, he was awesome. Right. He was a great player. Right. But they play the same exact thing every night. Sure. Like Vinnie Paul, started at that. The Ray, who's with Korn, is an awesome drummer. He's not new. Right. Right. And I did an interview, a Skype interview with a music school a couple of years ago, and I asked them, who are your new icons. Yeah. And they didn't have any. There's a guy named Zoltan Chaney is his name. Look him up. Yeah. Do you remember that video, the guy, Steve, that played the guy with the wrong gig?
Yeah.
Well, he's doing all that stuff.
That's great.
But he's playing, he's standing up, he's hitting the cymbals with his feet. I mean,
Amazing.
he's incredible showman.
Yeah.
Incredible showman.
Excellent.
I mean, he's a new guy. I would say is pretty awesome.
Yeah.
Because even though he's playing simple, he's got chops when he wants it.
Right.
But he's doing all this stuff, man. He's like incredible.
Yeah. That's
But I just discovered him recently.
Okay.
And not I don't know the names of guys. There's a lot of guys that are really great. But you don't know what their names are because there's no magazines, there's no MTV anymore. There's no, unless you're searching YouTube,
Right.
which I don't really sit down and search YouTube.
True.
I used to hear new bands on the radio.
Right. Exactly.
You don't have that no more.
Right.
And we don't have. Am I still? Yeah. And we don't have magazines. We don't have radio, and we don't have television. There's nothing new on MTV, even MTV2. I never sit down and watch that.
Well, one drum hero you certainly met and talked about in your book was Buddy Rich.
Oh, he was the man.
He was the man. Can you tell us a little your relationship with him and your experience with him?
Well, I had a lot of fun experiences with him. When I first met him, my manager was friends with his manager and this club owner from L.A., and Buddy was going to play there. And my manager said, "Hey, man, I think you should play with Buddy Rich. The same stage, we'll video it for Showtime." Showtime was the first cable thing. With Connected Generations. And I said, I don't know. I don't want to play with Buddy Rich. Because I heard the bus tape,
Right. Yeah.
I said, I don't want to play with him. I knew his daughter,
Okay.
And so anyway, it happened. Then it fell apart. I was glad. I went to the show to see him, and I took Vinnie with me, my brother, and we were up in the balcony, and his daughter comes out. Carmine, I didn't think you were going to come. I said, why? Because my father's really pissed off at you. And I'm thinking, oh, right. He's pissed off at me, the bus tape. Here we go.
Right.
He said, I said, why is he mad at me? He said, well, you challenged him to a drum battle like that asshole Ginger Baker, was his words, for press. And I said, I did not. I didn't do that. I told her the story. She said, that's it? I said, that's it. Well, come on back and tell Buddy that. I said, I'm not going back there and telling him that if he's mad at me. So she goes, come on, it'll be all right. I said, Vinnie, you come with me. So Vinnie went with me, went in there, and she said, Dad, this is that Buddy. She called him Buddy. Buddy, this is the guy that was going to play. Oh, you mean that asshole that was going to like that other guy, Ginger Baker? I said, no, that's not the story. I said, we both play Ludwig drums and blah, 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 blah. So he said, that's it? I said, yeah, that's it. I said, you were like my first guy I ever listened to. I'm not challenging you.
Right.
He said, oh. I said, do you smoke? I said, no. You smoke? No, I don't smoke. Do you smoke? I said, what do you mean? Pot? He says, yeah. Yeah, I smoke a little pot. He goes, good. And he reaches in, lights up a joint on chocolate papers, hands it to me. I take a hit. I give it to Vinnie. I'm going, I can't believe this. I'm smoking a joint with Buddy Rich. Oh, my God. And then we became friends after that. And he, on the drum offs I used to do, the Guitar Center stole from me. I did the first 5. And the second one I did, we had 10,000 people there in the park in Griffith Park. It was Carmine Appice Day, and my manager called me. I was out with Rod, and he said, it's Carmine Appice Day. It's going to be Carmine Appice Day, and Buddy Rich is going to be a judge. And I'm thinking, Buddy hates rock drummers. He ain't going to be a judge. He was the judge.
Wow. Incredible.
And we became friends, and we were going to do a record together, back to back. Carmine Appice, Buddy Rich, and Stanley Clark was going to produce it.
Holy cow.
And we could never get all of our schedules together. And then he got sick, and I visited him in hospital and went to his funeral. I became friends with the family, and he was just a great guy.
Right. Yeah.
And the funny thing, one funny story was the Muppets.
Yeah.
When he did the Muppet Show, that was my idea to do that, but I wanted to do it. And long story short, when I went to Australia, these people said I looked like this Muppet, the animal, when I played. I had the curly hair and all the drums all over, and I was really bouncing my head around.
Right.
I never heard of the animal, and they showed me a video of it. I said, oh, wow, maybe you're right.
Yeah.
So I went back to my manager and said, I want to challenge this Muppet guy, Animal, to a drum battle. Okay, I'll call Jim Henson's studio. He calls him. And they said, oh, that's an interesting idea. We'll get back to you. call back. We love the idea. We got good news and bad news. What's the good news? We love the idea. We're definitely going to do it. What's the bad news? We're going to use Buddy Rich. So I called Buddy. I said, I heard you doing the Muppet Show. He goes, how do you know? I said, it was my idea. He goes, hey, they wanted the best. So I said, yeah, F you, you bastard. You know? So we were friends, you know. And it was, to me, it was amazing because it must have been like John Bonham was when he met me, you know.
Right.
Or, you know, like when I met Joe Morello, you know. I mean, I was like, I was in awe, you know.
Yeah, your music heroes, right? And you get.
Then he became friends and became like a person.
Right. Did you ever get to jam with him? Maybe not a drum battle, but just
at my drum off, just a drum battle.
The drum battle.
Because at my drum offs, the climax was always all the judges played together.
Wow.
We all took fours, and of course, who wants to follow Buddy?
Right. Yeah.
So Vinnie, you got fast foot and fast hands. I don't want to follow Buddy. What about Michael DeRosa? I don't want to follow Buddy. Right. Jocko from Shandana. I don't want to follow Phil from Kansas. I don't want to follow.
Right.
You know, Bruce from the Knack. I said, you know what? You're all a bunch of wimps. I'll follow Buddy. I got double bass drum, and I followed Buddy.
Yeah, just
and it was great. It was great.
Just incredible.
And we became friends, you know.
Yeah, it must have been a very cool thing, you know, making friends with your music hero, and at any time you could say, hey, how did you do this or that from the record or whatever,
Well,
right?
I never did that.
No.
We never talked drums.
No.
We
Interesting.
never talked drums, other than in the helicopter. You know, the deal was he appeared at my drum off in the afternoon. At night, he was playing at Disneyland, which he always played. Yeah. And we had eyewitness news at the drum off, and in the helicopter was the eyewitness news camera. You know, and it was Buddy was in the front. I was in the back seat. Next to me was the eyewitness news, and the pilot was on the right. So the camera was on Buddy and me. So Buddy said, he turned around and goes, "This is my friend Carmine Appice. He's a great drummer. But what do I know?" You know, and I went, well, oh my God. You know, it's like flipping out.
No doubt.
And that's all the camera took.
Yeah.
On there. And then we just talked about him going to his gig. And, you know, I said, I'm looking forward to hearing you play. And
yeah.
I saw him there a bunch of times. One time when I had first put the color in my hair, they wouldn't let me in.
Really?
Because I looked like a punk rocker. They wouldn't let me in. I had my wife at the time had a broken ankle. She was in a wheelchair. I said, give me a break.
Yeah.
I said, I got my wife in a wheelchair. I pay big taxes to the state in this country.
Right.
And you're not going to let me in because I have red in my hair?
Right.
So they called Buddy. I said, call Buddy Rich. Yeah. Buddy Rich, I'm here to see Buddy. I'm his friend. I'm on his guest list. They called Buddy and they said, if you don't let him in, I'm not going on.
Wow. That's good.
And they let me in.
Yeah. As they should have, right? My God.
Yeah. And then, of course, we smoked a joint in the locker room, which was totally against all the laws in Disneyland.
Right. But it's rock and roll and jazz. We're breaking the rules, right? So on my Facebook page, I put out that we were meeting and interviewing, and I asked folks to say their questions that they wanted to ask you. A gentleman named Duncan Branham asks, can you play 5/4 in a 3/2 form rather than straight 5? Does that make sense?
3/2. Yeah, I don't see why you'd want to do that. I mean, probably. You know, you're going 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, do the get that, do that, do the, you know. But you know, it's like playing 4/4 and 3 and 1.
Right. There isn't much musical call for that, right?
No, I mean, usually if you're playing 5/4, you're playing a 5/8 or 7/8. You're playing straight across, unless the riff that you're playing goes like that, you know.
Would you say
there's a Rascals song that actually does that. It's called "Real Thing." It goes through 1, 2, 3, 1, 2.
Okay. Yeah.
Because that's the way the riff goes.
Got it.
But you don't play it. You play it as a bar of 5.
Got it. Are you counting when you're playing?
Not usually.
No, you just play at this point.
Yeah.
Yeah. Was that ever the case for you, counting?
Not really. When I was learning like linear stuff, or when I was learning to play 7/8 timing and 9/8 and 13/8 and 15/8 and 5/4. Yeah, I would count.
Yeah. Okay.
But now, you get to a point where it gets in your body and you feel.
Right.
It's in the blood.
That's right. Exactly. Muscle memory, right? So
yeah.
We got Dave Ferris asking, you've been playing dates with Felix and Gene of the Rascals this summer. How much of an influence was Dino Dinelli on your playing?
Well, Dino was an influence when I was younger. And before he was in the Rascals, as I talked about before. And he kept being an influence all the way through the beginning of Vanilla Fudge, because he was awesome. Right. He was a tremendous player. He was a great, R&B rock player, with some jazz overtones, some Gene Krupa overtones, fast hands, good sounding bass drums, had good combinations, great showman, where he'd do his sticks, and he was awesome.
Let's talk briefly about you and your brother. I mean, you got a musical family going on. Are there some more drum battles in store for us?
Yep, we're doing more gigs in October and November.
All right.
And, and Vinnie is one of 7 drummers in my family, my father's side of the family. And, but, I noticed when I left the drum set home, and I went home one day, and he pulled me in the room and said, "Carm, listen to this," and he starts playing a groove with fills, and I said, "Wow." My mother said, "What do you think?" I said, "Wow, it sounds great." I said, "What do you think we should do?" I said, "We should send him to my teacher." While he's young, he was like 9 years old, So she said, "Okay, he's driving me crazy like you did." So I wrote a song on our album called Brothers and Drums.
Wow.
And the lyrics is, it started in Brooklyn down on 41st Street. It was me, my family, trying to figure what we want to be. There was no little Vinnie when I started to play. Then later, years later, I found, never thought I'd hear my brother say he loved the drums like I did, and we played them for you. And he practiced, with a drum set I left at home. He practiced, I forgot the exact lyric. He practiced something to the bone, and my mother said, "He's driving me crazy like you did. Now we're brothers in drums."
That's great. I love it.
It's a really, really cool lyric, and it just came to me. Once I came with the title "Brothers in Drums," I said, "Oh, this is cool."
It's awesome.
And he grew up, and I was just with Rick Derringer on the Hippie Fest tour, and I reminisced about the day he called my mother. He called my mother's house asking for Vinnie. And my mother said, "Hi, Mrs. Appice," at the time. "This is Rick Derringer. Is Vinnie there?" "Oh, no, you want Carmine." No, I want Vinnie." No, you want Carmine? "No, Mrs. Appice, I'm calling for Vinnie. I want Vinnie to join my band." Wow. She couldn't believe that, Rick Derringer, who was a name at the time,
Sure.
was calling for Vinnie. Wow. He was 16 years old. He played with John Lennon, playing with Rick Derringer. He quit high school. He's 17. He's out on the road opening up for Aerosmith in stadiums with Rick Derringer.
Wow, that's incredible. Yeah.
And I had nothing to do with it other than sending him to the lessons and help him along the way whenever I went home.
Right. Well, it certainly sounds like you inspired him as a big brother and your success, right? Your success.
Yeah, my mother used to take him to all the shows and film wars, and he'd see me on Ed Sullivan. We did all these different TV shows.
Right.
Right. There's a show. We did. I had the big bass drums and everything. My hands were up here, and I was just killing it. Yeah. Killing it.
Right.
And Vinnie's watching. He's saying, "I want to do that." And then on the record, we did this thing where "Is that my brother on TV? That's what I want to be." He wouldn't say it. I did it in a kiddie voice, but he wouldn't say it.
You wouldn't do it.
No, he didn't want to do it.
That's
I did
fantastic. That's fantastic. The other question that I had, and just briefly too, we talked about this last time, but you ended up playing on Pink Floyd's album, Momentary Lapse of Reason. Can you recap that story for me, please?
Well, it was late 80s. I was with Blue Murder at the time, and we were home, I don't know, waiting for something. I don't know what we were home for. And I got a message by Bob Ezrin on my answer machine. He said, "Carmine, I'm producing a record that's screaming for Carmine drum fills. I go, really? What is that? I can't imagine what it is. And I call him. He said, it's Pink Floyd. I go, Pink Floyd? Where's Nick? Yeah, I knew all those guys. We did tours with him with Vanilla Fudge. Because Nick is racing his Ferraris and his calluses are soft, and they wanted to get some new blood. And this song is just screaming for your fills. I said, wow, okay. So I went down. I got paid a fee and spent the whole day, and they filled up 24 tracks at a time. And I played to a 4-track. I was there 12 hours doing it. And then I never heard the finished product. So every time I called Bob, he was putting the drum part together from all the different takes. Every time I called, I said, how is it? He goes, in one word, amazing. In one word, dramatic. In one word, thumping. In one word, just all these silly words. And so, well, when can I hear it? And so as soon as I finished, I never got to hear it. And I was doing a movie up in Canada. I was appearing in this movie called Black Roses. I did the soundtrack for it, and they wanted me to play drums. It was a movie about a musician band that was taken over by the devil. It was a heavy metal movie. And I heard that Pink Floyd album was coming out. So downstairs, they used to have these malls underneath the ground because the weather was so bad. So I went downstairs, found a record store, which you can't do today. Right? And I bought the cassette. So I had the Walkman. I bought the cassette, and I played it for the first time for myself in the room, and it was awesome. I said, God, I want a Pink Floyd album. Right. And then they went out on tour, and they played that song, and they had, what's his name, trying to play, Nick Mason trying to play my song, my fills. Right. I got to say, he had a hard time with it.
Yeah, great drummer, of course, Nick Mason, but a different type of drummer.
He didn't have double bass drum.
Right.
He was very laid back. He didn't have that kind of fire that I always had,
That's right.
And as a matter of fact, I have a drum head that I'll send it to you. It says, I'm selling it on the Rascal tour. It's a picture of me, like one of my stances like that, ready to kill something. And then there's a little bit of, I superimposed some fire, and it says, Carmine Appice, Fire and Fury.
Wow.
When Trump said that about North Korea, I said, what a great line. I got to use that for something.
There you go.
So I use it on that.
Amazing. And it was Dogs of War, the song.
Dogs of War was the track,
Dogs of War was the track. Amazing.
And after the track started with no drum, and when the drums came in, it was like King Kong. Big drum sound, big fill into the 6/8 groove, and then lots of fills around that 6/8 feel.
Right. Yeah, amazing
awesome.
song. Yeah. Lastly, Carmine, you've had such an amazing career in rock and roll, ups and downs, great books, the author of Stick It and The Ultimate Realistic Rock. Where do you see music going for you at this point? Where do you want it to go for you?
I'm just going where, what I've been doing. Hopefully I can get to do another record with my brother. I know it's not going to sell gold, but, it was fun to do, and it's fun to promote, and fun to write the songs. I'm still playing with Vanilla Fudge. Vanilla Fudge just did a DVD. Again, all these projects are not going to sell platinum and gold, but Vanilla Fudge, gets Audi car commercials, and we get into movies, soundtracks and stuff. So I anticipate that's still going to continue. And playing with the Fudge, Rascals, maybe do some shows with King Cobra. We're talking about maybe doing King Cobra and Last in Line, which my brother's in, which has got Vivian Campbell in it,
Amazing.
And King Cobra and Last in Line would be a good heavy metal show from the 80s kind of show.
Sure.
And, just keep playing, and real estate on the side. I collect cars, and I'm having a great life.
Yeah. Yeah.
I have a great wife, girlfriend. We've been together 16 years. My kids are grown up. They're doing great. And I got a great family, and, I'm reading the Bible for the first time in my life.
Okay. Yeah.
And I always loved all those stories. I saw all those movies, and now reading it, I'm actually not reading, I'm listening to it.
Okay.
Wow. But it's interesting because I could be driving and listening, and
sure.
And it's amazing stories, and and I'm trying to be a better person with it.
And
that's why I'm talking to you for 2 hours.
That's right. And I am so appreciative of you, Carmine. I am a fan. thank you so much sincerely for your music and for being on Musicians on the Record today.
No problem, man. It was a lot of fun. You had good questions all the way through, and I appreciate that.